This effect we will create right now. Hi, I'm Jake and I'm motion designer. I want to introduce you to After Effects in a way in which I've started. You could ask yourself, why should I learn After Effects? First of all, because it's fun to be able to make visual effects at home. But also, you can keep in mind that most studios, TV channels, YouTube channels, promos, intros, logo animation and other kinds of animation are made using After Effects. This is why I invite you to learn After Effects with me, while having fun recreating cool effects and at the same time getting familiar with this software. This is why it's not a problem if you are a beginner and don't know anything about After Effects. I still can teach you how to make this effect with zero skills. We'll go through basics and we'll work our way through it. I'll read your comments and will improve my future classes. I'll be happy to get your feedback. With After Effects you can do lots of things. You can even become next Zack King or create your own projects, create promos, logos and more. Possibilities are endless. I'll be happy to see you in my class as also your result after following all the steps. So, let's get started. As you can see, I'm using Adobe After Effects 2020, but for this effect, any version of After Effects will do fine. Also, I'm using standard layout. If for some reason you cannot see, for example, this Effects and Presets panel or any of other panels, you can go to Window and enable it from here. For example, Character. So let's import our footage to start working on this effect. We can just left mouse double click here or go to File, Import File to import our footage. This footage is available in the Resource tab to this class, so you can download it and import into your project. So let's click Import. So in this first quick video, I'm going to show you how you can rotoscope yourself from your footage. So let's take this blue screen footage, left mouse click and drag to this icon here or here on timeline to create new composition and just release it. If you want to use your own footage, it would be nice if you would film yourself against a chroma key, like this blue screen or green screen. And just remember, before filming, do not wear anything in your clothes which matches with your green screen or blue screen, because it will not allow you to key out yourself properly. So here we have two choices. First choice, if you had your green screen or blue screen, like mine, you can just go to Effects and Presets and type word key. And here you can just choose this preset, Keylight Advanced Spill Suppressor, and drag onto your footage. But don't be discouraged if you don't have green screen or blue screen. A bit later I'm going to show you how you can use any footage which you have. So in case of key out, you need to select with this picker, just left mouse click here and choose the color. And here in screen gain, you can just make sure to remove all the color, like this. We can also click here to see our final result or status, to see better what we are keying out. Our goal is to have black background and you should be completely white. So to achieve that, you need to go to Screen Matte, click here to open and reduce this clip white to really low value to get closer to this white look. Let's change to final result to see our final result. And with this Advanced Spill Suppressor, we can remove other parts of the color. From my experience, I'm getting better results and intermediate results. So let's change to intermediate. As you can see, we don't have any issues with the color. And if we click on this icon here, we can see the alpha matte. Basically, it represents the transparent parts. But now, as you can see, we need to get rid of this part. So we can choose this pen tool, left mouse click on it and left mouse click here and then another left mouse click and drag to create this kind of Bezier and continue with this. And make sure that your mask is inside of this transparent part, like this. You don't want to go here. And finally click on the starting point to close the mask. So with this mask, we are telling the software which part we want to keep. So this is how easily you can just key out yourself from the footage. But let's imagine that you don't have this green screen or blue screen. So let's select these all effects and press delete. Let's also delete this mask. I'm pressing M to see my mask. So let's delete it. So in this case, you would want to select your footage and left mouse double click on it. It will open in layer mode. In this mode, you can draw something or rotoscope yourself. In our case, we want to rotoscope ourselves. Just click on this roto brush tool here, left mouse click on it, and start drawing on yourself like this. Just left mouse click and drag to show the software what you want to keep. You can also hold Ctrl on keyboard and left mouse click and drag to the left or to the right to change this paint brush. So let's hold Ctrl and drag to the left to make it smaller. And if we hold Alt key on keyboard and left mouse click, we can just deselect this part because we don't want to have it. So this is pretty decent mask. We can also include this hair here and here, and then just click here to track this mask frame by frame. And with each frame, just make sure that your mask doesn't go anywhere. In our case, it's pretty easy mask, so I'm going to press play. So this process would be faster. It tracked to the end. Now we can just click here, left mouse click, and drag to this point. This point represents where we created our mask. And now we can just move this cursor to the start. It will start tracking backwards. So once this process is complete, you just need to make sure that your mask looking good. And once you're happy with your rotoscoping, you need to click on this freeze button. It will save your progress. And once this freeze process is complete, we can just exit this layer mode just by going to this composition mode. So now, as you can see, we basically getting the same kind of result. And let me quickly show you how you can render this footage with transparent background. So what you need to do is to go to composition and choose add to render queue. Here go to lossless and change to AV or QuickTime. Both works great. Then in video output, you want to change it to RGB plus alpha, which means that it will save all our RGB value as well as our transparency value. And finally, I don't have any audio, so I can set it to off and click OK. And by clicking here, you are choosing where you want to save yours. I already saved mine. It's Rota footage, which also available in resource tab to this class. And click save and click render. And you'll have your own footage to work with. So let's go to the next video. So if you skipped previous video how to rotoscope or key out yourself, let's start from the scratch. Basically, I'm using standard layout. I'm using Adobe After Effects 2020, but you can use any version of After Effects and this effect will work fine. And if you don't see any of these panels, you just need to go to Window and enable it from here, like Effects and Presets and Effects and Presets. So to import our footage, which I provided in this class, you need to left mouse double click here and just select all of this footage besides this blue screen footage, because this video I've used in previous video to show how you can rotoscope or key out your footage. So let's select all of these videos and click import. So now to create new composition and start work with it, we need to select this Rota footage and drop it here or on this icon to create new composition. So as you can see, I have a footage of myself cut out like this. If you want, you can film yourself like this to have your effect on yourself, but make sure that your final pose is similar to mine. It will be best if you will copy this kind of motion. So you can start whatever you want, but you need to end up with this kind of spreading arms. Composition is from head to waist high, because luckily I already pre-made sparks for you. So you wouldn't have to create it from the start. So we are going to use these kind of sparks and also these kind of sparks. And as you can see, it's end up with this kind of pose of your hands. If you do not use my own footage, then make sure to film your footage similar to mine and it will work great. So let's also add our background, this BG layer. Just left mouse click and drag it here below. So in this part of the class, we are going to generate this empty hole in our body. And for more dramatic effect, I think it looks cool when it's generated from the center and end up on our eyes. So for this, we want to create two kind of masks. First one will be for our body and second one will be for our head. With this time cursor, by left mouse clicking and dragging, we want to find the point where we are going to disappear, something like this. Then we can go to Layer, Auto Trace. It will create a mask for us and it will use alpha channel to create our mask, as you can see, which is perfectly around ourselves. With this preview button, you can see how your mask looking. So if you want to change some of these values, you can already see how it's going to look. Value of 3 looks great. And with experimenting of these values, I end up with these numbers, which get me a pretty decent result. Make sure that you're using current frame. It means that it will create a mask from this frame and not from beginning or all area. And also let's uncheck this box because we want to apply this mask not to the new layer, but to this layer itself. And click OK. Now as you can see, we have our mask on ourselves. So if we press M on keyboard, we can see our mask. And if we set it to subtract, it will delete ourselves. But we can also open properties of this mask. So let's click here to see all the properties. And if we change this mask expansion, you can clearly see what we are going to use it for. So let's lower this value to make this hole completely disappear. In my case, it's minus 300, but if you are using your own footage, this value could be different. We can also click here to delete this keyframe because we don't want it, but we want to create a keyframe for mask expansion. So let's click on this stopwatch to create a keyframe. As you can see, we've created a keyframe. Keyframe is basically the point in time which remembers the value of certain property. So in this case, this keyframe remembers this value of this property. It's used to create an animation. So if we drag this keyframe here, it means that at 2 seconds of this video, it will stay on value 300. And about here at 5 seconds, if I will change this value to, let's say, 55, like this, it already creates new keyframe, as you can see. And between these keyframes, it will change from 55 to 300, which we set it here. So if we scroll here, you can see that this value changes. And also you can see that we created an animation. So this is how you can easily create this kind of animation. Let's make sure that this animation starts around 1 second and maybe ends about here at 5 seconds. So if we deselect any of the layers, we can see that we have this kind of animation. And as you remember, I wanted more dramatic effect where it's end up on our eyes. So for this, we want to duplicate this layer. Just select this layer and press Ctrl D on keyboard. It creates a new copy, and we can press M to see the mask, which also is copied. But in this case, we don't want to have this mask. So let's select it and press Delete. Let's close this here and disable this layer below. We can also rename our layers so it would be easier to navigate. So let's call it bottom part and this will be top part. To rename our layers, you need to left mouse click on it to select it and press Return on keyboard to rename it. I'll call it top part. So let's make sure that our animation ends up on our eyes. So for this, we want to select our top part and select this pen tool. With this pen tool, we can create our custom masks. So left mouse click here and then here and left mouse click and drag. In this way, you can see that you can create this kind of Bezier curve. And we want to create this kind of oval around our eyes and click here at the end to close the mask. So now we have only our eyes. So let's enable our body here by clicking here on this eyeball to enable this bottom layer. And if we open this mask, we can change this expansion to make sure that we have our head like this. I will go even further and change this value to maybe 225. Which will include our neck. Once again, on your footage, this value could be different. But if you're using the same footage as I do, you just can copy this value. Let's create a first keyframe because we want to animate this as well. So click on this stopwatch to create a keyframe. Let's make sure that we are starting this animation about here, maybe at 3 seconds. Exact same time you can see here, 2 seconds and 23 frames. And about here at 6 seconds, let's finish this animation. So we want to decrease this expansion. As you can see, it will create this kind of animation. So make sure that you are getting to this invisible point where we cannot see anything. But don't go overboard like this, because it will speed up animation, which we don't want. We just want to go to the edge where it's just about to disappear. And once it's disappearing, you need to set this value. And let's scroll through with this time cursor. And what we can do is to select this selection tool and left mouse click on one of the points. In this case, we can scroll through and change position to make sure that this animation will end up on our eyes like this. Just make sure to double click on one of the points and then you'll be able to move it around. So now if you press 0 on numpad, you can see this preview, and this is basically the core or our effect. And in the next video, I'm going to show you how to create a more roughened edge to add more interesting look to this effect. So now let's create more interesting edge to this effect. We want to duplicate these both layers. Just select one of them, hold Ctrl and select other one. And then press Ctrl D to duplicate it. We can set it below like this. And for now, let's disable these two top layers. And maybe let's also disable this top one too, to see only one layer and to see better what is going on with this layer. So first of all, I want to apply effect called Roughen Edges. If you don't see this Effects and Presets panel, you can enable it from here, Window, Effects and Presets. Type here Roughen Edges, left mouse click and drag to our bottom part too. If we increase the border of this effect, like to 36, we can see this effect already working. Basically, border is our amount. If we increase it, we get more of roughened edges, but I'll keep at 36. And also I want to change the scale. If we increase the scale, you can see that we have less of these edges. And let's maybe change type to spiky because it's much more interesting effect. And now we can change the scale and you can set any value which you like. I want to have spiky kind of effect. By the way, you can zoom in and zoom out using scroll on the wheel. Let's say 230 looks good. You can also change the evolution. In this case, you're just changing the pattern of this effect. I'll leave it at 0. But now we can see the problem. We want to have this roughen edges on inside, but we don't want it to affect our outside. So what we can do, we can select our bottom part, press M on keyboard to see our mask and duplicate it. Just press Ctrl D to duplicate. So to understand this technique better, let's set both masks to none. And let's start with the first mask. With the first mask, we want to set it to add, which means that it will show only the additive part of this mask. So basically we had this animation of the expansion, as you remember here, which expands from the center outwards like this. And now we've duplicated this mask again, and if we drop down here and see this mask expansion, we can see the same animation. And if we set this second mask to subtract, it will cancel this animation. But if we select these keyframes and move it further like this, it will start a bit later, which means that we have the same kind of animation from center outwards, but first mask is additive, it creates, and second mask is subtracting, so it creates this kind of edges. So we want to isolate only this kind of shockwave. If we enable this bottom part and move these keyframes a bit to the left, just select all of them and move to the left, we can synchronize with our previous animation. And now we're getting as a result ourselves and these roughen edges effect, which looks more organic and more interesting. To see our effect better, let's disable this bottom part for now. So we would see only our shockwave effect. It's kind of too thick for my taste, so I'm going to set it, these keyframes, a bit more tight together. So basically, if you're gonna scroll here and only move these keyframes, you can adjust how thick this kind of shape will be. Now let's work on this top part here. So let's enable it and disable this bottom part. So here we are going to use same kind of technique. So let's repeat it. Let's press M. We can see our mask, and now we can just press Ctrl D on keyboard to duplicate this mask and set it to subtract. Exactly the same which we did to this layer here. Then we can select our layer and we have really cool shortcut. If we press U on keyboard, it will show only our keyframes of animation. And this time we want to select these bottom keyframes and move it to the left because we have invert type of animation. Let's look at this one more time. You can see this outwards animation. It goes from the center to the outwards. And in this case, we have inwards animation. It goes from outwards inwards. So this is why we are changing these keyframes not to the right but to the left to get this kind of animation. Let's maybe select these keyframes and move it a bit further and enable this bottom part. So basically we want to roughly connect these both animations. Let's select this bottom part and copy this roughen edges effect. Just press Ctrl C to copy and select this top part and press Ctrl V to paste it to get this kind of roughen edges effect on our face also. We can a bit customize this roughen edges just by adding drop shadow effect. This is a cool trick. If you left mouse click on it and drop it before roughen edges, it will add a bit of dimension to this effect. So here we can set opacity to 35. Because we want to have it settle. If we zoom in closer, we can see that it will work only here. Distance I'm gonna set to 45 to see it better, and softness let's set it to 100. So now if we zoom out, we can kind of get this 3D kind of feel to this animation. And finally, let's also copy this drop shadow effect. Press Ctrl C and paste it to this top part. Press Ctrl V and also set it before roughen edges to apply this effect on top part of ourselves. Let's select these both layers and go to Layer, Precompose or Ctrl Shift C and let's call it spiky edges and click OK. And if we enable this top part, we can see this kind of effect, which already looks pretty cool. Don't worry about these parts here because we will have a lot of glow and sparks, which will cover all imperfections. Well done! In the next video, we will add some glow to these edges. I'll see you in the next video. Now, let's add some glow to our edge. We need to duplicate our spiky edges. Just select it and press Ctrl D to duplicate it and select this bottom one and let's move it further like this, like 3 frames further. Now we want to apply effect called curves and apply to this layer below. With this curves effect, we want to add this kind of glowing edge effect. So let's set it really high like this. By the way, if you don't know how fast you want your animation to be, which we've created here with these keyframes, you can also change it at any time, but best way to know properly how fast they should go is just to apply some of these sparks, like this bottom sparks. Just drop it here and make sure that your effect will be in time with these sparks. Then as you can see, it looks just great. But let's not go ahead of ourselves and let's work on these edges. We can apply tint effect because we don't want any kind of weird colors. It will make it just black and white. And with another curse effect, we can apply any kind of colors. So to see this effect better, we want to apply glow effect. So type it here, glow, and use this stylized glow. Here we can set our radius to 46, so we will see it better. It already looks pretty cool. And let's change this intensity to 2.7. And now with this curse effect, which we've added before, we can add any kind of colors. So in my original example, which I've showed in preview, it looked like fire. But let me show you that you can change to any kind of colors which you can only think of. For example, let's add some blue, and you can already see that we introducing some blue into our effect. We can also add some red, and if we go to green color, we can increase some green and decrease it here, or even create this weird curve of green. And if we just change this first curve, we can see that we introducing multiple kind of colors. In case if you want to have more like a rainbow kind of look, we can even add some vibrance effect to these spiky edges which is below and increase vibrance. Let's set it to 100 to get even more colors and maybe increase a bit of saturation to 35. In this case, we're getting as much colors as we can possibly get. We can even add another glow, stylized glow, and drop it below. And with this second glow, you can just change the radius to have it more of it and it would be more visible. So change the radius and maybe increase a bit of intensity if you want to see even better. You can also change this glow threshold, which will introduce more colors and a bit of contrast. So in this way, you can change to any kind of colors and not just one. But if you want more simple kind of look, you can just add tritone effect. Just type it here, tritone, and set it below. And with these midtones, you can just change to one of the colors which you like. So I'm gonna set it to reddish, so it will resemble the look which I showed in the preview. But don't forget, if you turn off this tritone effect, you can always create these kind of interesting colors using curves, in case if you want more colorful look. But for this class, I'm going to show you how I've created this more kind of fire look. And in this video, let's add some dimension, like we are barely can see the back part of myself. See you in the next video. So now let's add some back part of myself. It's pretty easy to do. Just select this spike edges which is on top. As you can see, it doesn't have any effects, which is perfect for us. And press Ctrl D to duplicate it and move it here below. We can even rename it, press Enter or Return on keyboard and add word back, so we would know it's back part. To see it, we want to just move this layer in time like this. And now as you can see, we're starting to introduce this back part of ourselves. Just let's add some curse effect in effects and presets here. Let's add to our back and let's make it a lot more darker like this. So if I will disable this layer, you can see that we introducing our back part, which gives this illusion like it's 3D dimensional. And even to increase this kind of effect, we can select this spiky edges effect, which has all of these glows, and just press Ctrl D to duplicate it. And let's put it back, drop below like this. And let's also rename it and call it back glow. And let's also move it further. So we will start introducing this one. And also we can change in tritone and add different kind of color if you want to introduce more colors to it. Let's set it to orange kind of color, so we would have some variation in the colors. Don't forget, if you will select this spiky edges back glow layer, you can just scroll up, and with these curves you can change the intensity of this glow and also introduce more color, as well as with this spiky edges effect. Let's also call it glow, so it would be easier to find. And also if we will change this curve in the first curves effect, it will introduce more color. So if we will press 0 on numpad, we can see our preview. As you can see, it already looks pretty cool. What we want to do is to speed up this animation of back one, because we don't want to see it so much. So let's select these both back one layers and right mouse click on it and go to time stretch. And let's change it to 92 to make it a bit faster. and click OK. So as you can see, it already finishes faster, which is exactly what we want. And by the way, let me show you a quick little preset how to create a more kind of fire look. We can just disable this tritone effect and this spiky edges back glow and change this curve to a preset which I've used to create more fiery kind of look. So what you need to do is to change here at channels to red and set it like this. Just copy this curve, then go to green channel. Let's also click here, which make it solo to see only what we are working on. And finally here at the blue channel, we want to set it lower, like a lot lower like this, and create another point here and move it here. And finally in RGB channel, we want to set a bit lower and increase in shadows. So basically with this setup of these curves, you can get this kind of fire. So you would not only get this one kind of color, but the range of the fire kind of look. Let's unsolo this. And as you can see now inside, we can even get yellow, red and orange, which looks much more interesting. And in the next video, I'm gonna show you how to add the sparks themselves to sell this look even better. I'll see you there. So now we want to select the selection tool and click here to go to the project, and let's add some sparks. I'm gonna drag and drop this bottom sparks here on top, and let's time it well. Just drag it here to make sure that they are coming just about this edge. We can set it to screen, so they will be brighter. We can also add effect called CC Force Motion Blur on top of this bottom sparks and set shutter angle to 450. And samples let's increase to 40. In this case, it will look like it has a bit of motion blur as well as increases the amount of these sparks. So let's add some curves. With this curves effect in alpha channel here, we can increase the visibility, and now we can add some glow to sell this effect even better. So choose this stylized glow. Glow radius, let's set it to 46, and let's increase the intensity to 2.7. And you can play around with this glow threshold to see which kind of colors you like best. I will add a bit of reddish kind of colors and maybe stay at 80. It will introduce some red and yellow kind of colors. But once again, if you will add some tritone effect, you can completely change the color of these sparks to any colors which you want. I'm going to use original colors, and if you scroll through this timeline, you can see that we have these cool sparks, but we don't actually have the sparks on our head. I've decided to create these sparks separately in case if you want to have more dramatic look and if you would want to add it separately. So let's edit these top sparks here, also set it to screen. We can copy all of these effects from this bottom sparks. Just select, press Ctrl A on keyboard to select all of these effects, and press Ctrl C to copy. Go to top sparks and Ctrl V to paste. And let's move it here, this layer to the right, to time it well. So it also should be on the edges of our mask. So once you've matched these two sparks layers, you can just select both of them, top sparks and bottom sparks, and go to layer pre-compose, which means basically to make these two layers into one. So let's call it maybe shooting sparks, and click OK and set it mode to screen. So it would be brighter, and you can even press Ctrl D to duplicate it. It makes it even brighter. And if you want to increase amount of it, you can just drag a bit like this, and you will get a lot more sparks. But in my case, I leave it as this. And finally, we're missing two parts. First part, that this effect is going on, but we don't have anything inside. This is why I've created sparks stay, which basically looks like atoms from our body. And we will add them in the next video. Just select this bottom spark stay and drop it just above this back layer, like this. We also want to time it well. To see it better, just disable these shooting sparks by clicking here on eyeball. So now we have this inside matter, which disappearing. We can also set it to screen. And let's maybe add some glow. We can go to this glow here on top and select this glow and press Ctrl C to copy, and go here to bottom spark stay and press Ctrl V to paste it. But we can add a bit more of effects to make it look like here was some kind of matter. So let's duplicate this bottom spark stay, press Ctrl D, let's type it here Gaussian blur, and add it to this top bottom spark stay. Here we can delete this glow because we don't want it on this layer. And blurriness, let's set it to 16. Let's also add some curves, and also let's click here on solo to see it better, and click here to see on black background. So with this blurriness, as you can see, we've melted them together, these particles, and with this curves effect, in alpha channel, we want to make it a lot more visible, something like this. Now we have this kind of blob, which we can tweak it a bit. Let's type it here, CC vector blur in effects and presets. And with this amount, we can get really cool effect. I think really cool effect starts from 30 to about 55, and 30 will connect particles really cool. So if we solo on this bottom spark state, we will introduce our particles, and as you can see with these two layers and with the changing of this effect, we can create a bit of connection between these particles, which really looks like here was some kind of matter. And finally we can add some curves effect, and if we will pull this RGB curve down, we can introduce a bit more of color if you want. And let's unsolo these both layers. So now with these particles inside, we can get this kind of cool effect, but we still want to make this go away faster, because as you can see here at the end, it stays for too long. So just select these both layers, bottom spark stay and bottom spark stay also, right mouse click on it and go to time stretch, and change it to 90. In this case, it will disappear a lot faster. And we can even press S on keyboard about here to see the scale, create a keyframe and move it a bit further, and about here let's increase the scale, so it would look like they are just a bit floating around like this and disappearing, which looks kind of cool. And finally, let's enable these shooting sparks to see it together. And now as you can see, we kind of added everything which we have, but it still doesn't look like it's blended together. So as a final touch, we want to add overall glow. What we can do is to duplicate some of these spikes back glow, just select it and press Ctrl D and place it on top, like here. And let's go to the project panel. Basically, if we will click on this layer name, we will see that it is using spike edges composition, which is right here. And as you can see, the spike edges effect has too much glow on our face, which we don't want. So let's duplicate here in spike edges, not here, but here. If we duplicate in here our composition, it will create entirely new composition. Not the copy, not the duplicate, but entirely new composition. So let's call it overall glow. And let's open it. So we will use the same kind of animation, but we don't want to use this top part on our face. We can even delete it, select it and press delete, and then select this bottom part and click on one of the points, and just like this, cut the top part. So once again, select one of the points, and then with this box, select all of the points which we don't want, and press delete. So in this case, we have only this kind of animation. Let's go to our main composition, which is raw footage, and select these spiky edges which we created. Now we can just select this overall glow, select it and hold Alt key on keyboard and drop it on spiky edges. Just make sure that this one is selected, this one is selected, and then left mouse click, hold Alt key on keyboard and drop it here. It will change it like this. And now as you can see, it works only in this part which we want. So now finally we can just add some Gaussian blur. Let's add it on this overall glow, and let's set to really high value, like 450. As you can see, it's adding some glow, and let's set it to screen, so it will add only the glow part like this. We can even enable this tritone effect if you want to control which kind of color will be introduced, and in highlights also. As you can see like this. With this glow, we are blending all of these effects together really nice. And we can even duplicate this overall glow one more time. Just select it and press Ctrl D to duplicate it. And with this one, we can make a bit tighter glow. So we can change this Gaussian blur to 200. If we will see only this layer, you can see that we can set to a really high value to get overall glow, or to 200. As we said, to get only these hot spots. And once again, with these midtones and highlights, we can control which kind of colors we want to introduce to our glow. And it's a good idea to add some curves effect to our background. With this curves effect, we want to intensify this kind of glow. So we can create a keyframe to our curves. And here where it's really bright, we want to darken our background. So this glow will cover all of our screen. Like our camera cannot handle this kind of much of glow, and it's trying to change the exposure to this source of light. We're basically emulating what camera would do in this kind of situation. Same kind of animation, of course, we want to copy, and let's find only ourselves on top. It's this one, and apply to ourselves. We can just select our background, press U to see where we started our animation. It looks like here, and then select ourselves, this bottom part of ourselves, and also press Ctrl V to paste our animation. So if we will solo this layer, we can see that it getting darker, and also apply this animation to our face as well. Just make sure that when these sparks are getting closer to our face, we want to reset these curves so it will get brighter as well. And here also reset. So basically with this kind of curves, we creating this darkened kind of look, so this source of light would look even brighter. And finally at the end, when everything is glowing, we want to set this to normal value of our face by resetting the curves. And now let's press 0 on numpad to see our final result. So this is basically the entire process how you can create effect like this. I hope you liked it. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments. If you like this class, you can follow me here on Skillshare and you can check all of my other classes. This one is really cool. It's really fast, just 11 minutes. And at the end, you'll get this kind of effect, which looks really cool. You should totally check it out. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next class.